Okay, so I'm gonna go over some of my favorite brushes, which I filmed this yesterday and apparently my camera stopped working. So, you know, gotta roll with it. Okay, so I'm gonna redo this. This is a mop brush, nice round brush, lots of color, beautiful. So let's give that a try. I'm gonna use this with a different color than I did yesterday so I can redo it. So we are going to use wet on dry. This is quinacridone purple, and this is going to be a mop brush. And you can get some nice little clouds and floating. And an example of when I use that is going to be if I'm painting a flower, a petal, then I'm going to use that generally as one of my first stages to get initial colors down. So if I'm painting, let's see, I'm going to paint just this random shaped petal here. There we go. And one thing that I do want to mention that is very important in watercolor, even when you're doing washes a lot of times, is that how you put the paint on is going to matter. And what I mean by that is if you have, say, a petal shape, and it is round, and the shape is like this, we are going to want to paint in the direction of that shape. We don't want to go like this. We don't want to go, like sideways. You will get lines that will not get that initial shape. So I'm going to paint in the direction that that petal is so that you can get that three-dimensional shape as you add other colors. So this is just a tester. And to go over lifting, I'm going to show you lifting really quick while I have this here with me. Like I did on the last video. So lifting, I'm going to lift like that. Lifting can give you a lot of really great, this is too dry. Lifting can give a lot of great texture and shape when you are looking at adding veining in petals. So let's say I wanted to lift a vein there. Lift a vein there. And again, you do want it to be a little bit drier. This is just an example of lifting. I wouldn't paint it like that. Okay, so that is going to be a mop brush that I'm going to get like that. And again, one of the biggest things that I can tell you to especially get a really saturated color like that, put on your color and leave it alone. Okay, so let's go to my next one, and maybe I will use and test out some of my brushes so you can see the brushes. Now this is a round 8. I do have DaVinci Cosmo Top Spin. So I use this a few different ways. If I am painting and I'm looking at painting in larger areas of shadow, veining, or texture, I'm going to use this brush. And there's a couple different ways that I want to show you how I use this. So you can notice that this is the belly of the brush and this is the point of the brush. When I focus on a lighter stroke using the point of the brush, then I am going to be able to get a thinner, depending on obviously the brush. Now I'm using just the tip of it. Now, if I want to change that, I can push a little bit harder and use the belly of the brush. So these are exercises you should try with your own brushes, whatever sizes you have. Just kind of get a piece of paper and make some different marks and see how you feel about that. Now, can I fill it in? Yes. Okay, so you can see how that's something that you can really use, and you're going to use that ability with most of your round brushes, except the really tiny detail brushes, which I am going to show. Okay, so this is really great for that. Now my next smaller sizes in my rounds. Okay, so my next sizes, I have a 5, I use a 0, and I think I have a couple zeros, and a 3. Which again are going to be the same thing as the round. You're going to have the belly of the brush, a point of a brush, and I am going to encourage you, whatever brushes you have purchased, whatever you have, do these exercises, test each one to see how thin that brush is on the point and what that's going to look like on the belly of the brush. So I didn't didn't get enough water. Here. This is one of my favorite shades of purple, by the way. I'm painting tulips right now, and that's what it is. So you can see that that point on the brush is much thinner in comparison. I don't know why my hand is shaking so much. Okay. See, and I can get that fairly thin with a 5. Now, another thing that I use this size brush for a lot is actually going to be softening the edges. And that's what I did here. You can see that completely dry. And I'm going to show that. So let's say I make a fold in the petal, or it's the edge or something like that, okay? I have my line of paint, wherever that's going to be, however thick I think that's going to be. Okay, and in order to soften the edge on that, I'm going to get only water, no paint, fairly damp. Okay, and I'm going to come along that edge here, and I am going to pull it out with that water. You can see I got a little blob of paint there. I'm going to pull it out, okay? And now the edge on that line is softened. It is not as hard. And if I do a little scrubbing, you can really get that line to come away. Okay, so that's going to be pulling the paint this way, which you are going to use it in various ways. Okay, pulling it. Now that edge is also softened, meaning that it's not a hard edge. This is a hard edge over here. If I want to soften that line, I can still do it. I'm going to get some back bloom in that, but I'm just giving an example of how you can do that. Now that's really fun when you want to add a different color to it. We're going to experiment here. And if I want to add a different color as I'm softening, I can get a lot of really beautiful mixes on the page. That's a light wash of another color, dropping in another color while it's wet. Okay, so we're gonna do that one more time with softening the edges, and I'll show you how. Let's get a tinier brush. So this, for example, is when I'm gonna do a veining. Say this is a petal, and I've just done this little veining here in a petal. We're just going to give an example, okay? Now I'm going to take a brush, depending on, I usually go 1 or 2 sizes up, depending on how much I want that. And while it is wet or damp, I'm going to come along with just water. I'm going to pull it out so that it softens that edge. And if it's too dry, it might be. I'm going to have to scrub a little bit to get that to soften the way I really want it to. Sometimes that's necessary if it dries. I had that paint fairly dry. You can see as I blended and softened that edge, it's not quite as hard edge as that one. Let's say I wanted it a little darker. I can do it a little bit darker. I can add some paint in there. I can soften that up. That is really a useful tool I use a ton, is softening the edges. And I can even do it some more. I want it to be a different gradient of paint. Okay.